Alright, so in this section we're going to be painting some fine details on a few of the different parts. We're going to be painting the helmets, the gas tank slash receiver box, which I think goes that way, and some details on the front grille. So this phase we're going to be kind of leaving the RC world and moving into the wargaming painting space. I did a bunch of that in the past, as I've mentioned before. I paint using Citadel paints. Citadel is the company that runs Warhammer and or makes Warhammer. So this isn't going to be like a full painting tutorial for kind of miniature painting, but I figure I'll do some kind of tips and tricks if you're going to attempt it yourself. So the first tip is to use high quality paints. So the Citadel paints are, yeah, I'm not going to lie, they're expensive. They're like $7 for one of these little pots, and these pots are, you know, I don't know how much is actually 0.4 fluid ounces or 12 milliliters. So these are expensive. The difference between this and something like you'd get at a big box hobby store like Michael's or something like that is that this has a far higher concentration of pigment. So you need far less paint to completely cover something. In this situation, you could maybe get away with some cheaper paints. When you're painting miniature figures that are an inch tall and you need to put, you know, like eyeballs on, you need as little paint as possible. The second tip is get some decent brushes. Now, obviously, what brushes you use are going to vary based on what you're doing. I have a whole cup of brushes in the background, but I like zero round for a lot of stuff. So that zero is basically referring to the size, and then round is the fact that this is a round brush versus something like a flat brush here, which has a more flat profile. This is a 2 kind of flat. So doing this, there's really no taping. You just have to be careful with everything. It's very fine work. You need to be braced, right? I'm going to be braced on the table the whole time. I'm going to be going pretty slowly. This stuff dries relatively fast, but you know, there may be some gaps in the filming where I need to let a layer dry. So for example, I want this whole fuel cell kind of raised section with where you put the gas in to be a different color than all of the bolts. So I have to kind of paint the whole thing whatever color I end up using, let it dry, and then come back and paint all of those bolts. Another tip, when you're painting things like that have no good place to hold, I use wine bottle corks, and this is called sticky tack. It's kind of this goopy, you know, it's kind of like double-sided tape, but it's more like silly putty. So I can hold this by this. If you're trying to hold it by the helmet, you're gonna have a bad time. You're gonna smudge it. So yeah, I'm gonna start with what I think is probably the easiest thing. I want to paint the Axial logo on the front grille red, but only the raised parts. So I'm going to find a very fine brush for this one. This is probably my best brush here. What you're also going to need is some water. So I've got these little pots of water back here. It's just a little, you know, thing of water to clean your brush. This is going to be pretty simple because I'm just going to be doing it red to match the other accenting of the truck. The helmets I have some more complicated plans for that are going to involve blending some paint, and I'm hoping it'll come out pretty well. But we're going to start with this. So I'm going to be using a, this is the brightest red I have in my Citadel paints. I'm kind of using what I have kicking around. So these have been sitting for a while, so I need to shake the crap out of it. And you're going to want a paper towel nearby to wipe the brush off, should you get too much. So when you're painting out of these pots, you can't really pour. But you don't want to be sticking your brush all the way in, so I generally will paint off of this top little piece that sticks down. And I'll do my best to stay out of the camera here. So basically I'm going to just be doing this super fine little Axial logo in this color. So what I like to do first, I push my brush gently. You have to be very gentle with like 0-point brushes. You will destroy lots of brushes if you're not very careful. So stick my tape down a little further. This stuff, you're just going to be very gentle. It's all freehand. I'm braced against the desk, my workbench. And that's that. Came out quite good. I may hard coat that, and we'll get to that at the end though. So I'm going to set this aside to dry with the gas tank, which definitely needs a top coat. So this is the Tamiya PS line for metallic silver on this I ended up using. And when I touch things, I'm getting sparkles all over my fingers. So I gotta put this paint on and then I gotta clear coat it still. That way it stops dripping sparkles everywhere. So I want all of these strapping on the tank to be red. So I want all of these straps to be red with a kind of aluminum base coat. Now for this one, this brush is a little too small. So I'm gonna clean my brush off. Don't ever, with these super tiny brushes, you just can't let them sit with paint on them. You basically have to clean them immediately or you'll ruin your brush. I went through a lot of brushes when I was learning. Don't buy expensive brushes when you're brand new, because you are going to go through a bunch of them. Alright, so for this one, I've got some bigger details that I need to do. So I need to pick a bigger brush, but not too big. Alright, so this is like the Citadel small dry brush. I think it'll be fine for what I'm doing. I'm still going to use this same red. I'm going to start on this piece. I did have a small ding here with the white paint from something drying next to it. I'll put a sticker over it. These, because they're a little bigger, I am doing the sides. It all depends on how good you are with your brush control. If I'm not talking quite as much. As you can see though, this paint one coat and I'm done. If you use cheaper stuff, that may not be the case. When you're doing bigger surfaces, you gotta be careful about leaving brush strokes. If you want kind of in-depth guides on how to do painting like this, I highly recommend Sarastro's painting. I'll put his link in the description. He's a dedicated artist who does miniature war game painting, and the guy is a just absolute magician. He's so good. I learned almost everything I know about painting from his YouTube channel. He's been around for years. He's still doing stuff. He's a real cool guy. one set of strapping done. I'm going to go the whole way around and do that, and I'll come back on the next piece. Alright, I've got everything red painted. I think it came out quite good. It took me a fair little bit. I painted some other scale accessories as well. I've got this little battery that I 3D printed. I painted the top on, and this shifter that I bought. I will put the link on the screen here, or I'll put the name of the creator here. Really nice little shifter knob for the interior, so I've painted the tops of those red. So now we're going to do even finer detail work. So I've got my black. This is a pure black, and I'm going to pick out all of the bolts. So this is pretty simple, but you just got to be careful that you don't tag the silver. So I'm gonna start actually with this inner red part here, and I'm just gonna go just like that. And I know that's very hard to see, but I'm just tagging the top of the bolts with just the tiniest little dab of black. I could potentially go back to silver here, but I think black will look better. I've got enough silver on these pieces aesthetically already. I could have maybe done a second red coat, but I don't think that was particularly needed. So you can see, if I can get it to focus. And I'm basically just going to do this. I'm going to pick out some very fine details about all of these things to give it some real depth. I'm going to go around and do that. Alright, so in this section we are going to be painting our Lexan driver panel. Your standard Lexan instructions apply. You want to take this, you want to wash it down with soapy water. I use Dawn dish detergent to make sure the backside is nice and clean. Now again, with any Lexan, you paint the underside and you paint it backwards, lightest to darkest. This is going to be by far my most ambitious attempt at detailing anything Lexan. So what you want to do is you want to line out your different colors with Sharpie on the top. Remember, you're going to peel this protective film off, so all this Sharpie will just go away. So I've marked it all out. Now this is going to be my first time using liquid mask. So I've got some liquid mask from Biddy Design. I've heard great things about this in the past. I've always done tape. I like tape, I'm pretty good with tape, but there is just no way I'm going to be able to tape this much detail off. So I've marked everything out. I'm going to have a silver dash, silver mid panel. These parts around the edges are going to be black, as well with, the shadows. Driver seats are going to be white, seats are going to be red. The seat belts are going to be red, and the steering wheel and the panel, the passenger's handlebar is also going to be red. So I've got this marked out. I'm going to apply the liquid mask to the underside. I'm going to let that dry overnight. I'm going to apply another layer. I'm going to let it dry better part of a day. I'm going to apply a third layer to get a nice thick coat. That way I can very easily peel this off. I've watched a fair number of how-tos on how to use this stuff. The thicker it is, supposedly the better. So I am going to get to applying that liquid mask, and we'll do that on time-lapse. Alright, so I've changed my mind. I'm not going to time-lapse it. For those of you who don't have much painting experience, I apologize if I'm a little muffled. I'm wearing a respirator. With the liquid mask, you don't want to mask the first thing you're going to paint. So all of my silver section, I'm not going to mask. I'm going to mask everything but the silver section. So I'm starting with a relatively fine brush here to get the lines. I've done some miniature wargame painting in the past, And we're going to need you on this side if you want to see anything, I've realized, because I'm the righty. Do my best here to keep everything in frame. I think we need up a hair. And I'm going to start by, and you don't want to be touching the back here. The oils from your skin will totally mess everything up. So, apologize if I don't talk a lot. It's relatively focus intensive. I'm using a very flat, wide brush here to try to get the cleanest lines I can. And I'm going to start by edging everything, and then I'm going to change to a bigger brush to go faster. And if you get a little over trim, you can trim that off later with your X-Acto knife. Alright, so I've got this half set up. I'm going to go up a brush size here in frame. I'm going to go up to a much bigger brush here just to speed things along, because I no longer need to be accurate on this half. If you don't know what this stuff does, basically, instead of tape, it dries into like a rubber. And then you cut the rubber away where you want to paint. So you get very clean lines with the X-Acto knife. Alright, so I'd say that driver is done. I'm going to switch back to my smaller brush. I'm going to call that done. Let it sit overnight. And that's how you do it. So next time you see this will be when I'm cutting it off. Alright, so we're going to be painting the Lexan now. And this has 3 layers of the liquid mask on it. So it should be nice and sharp. I'm going to take a very sharp X-Acto knife here, and I'm going to cut away parts that I want to paint first. So I want to do the silver first. I got a little bit of stuff over into the silver area, so I got to clean that line up. And because this has got this on it, I can now hold the bottom without fear of needing to re-tape it or re-wash it. So you're just going to lightly trace. Now, I see people online using airbrush to apply this stuff, specifically because it gives you a much cleaner spray. I may have to invest in that if I start using this a lot. We'll see how this goes. So I'm just tracing around, but lightly, because we don't want to cut the Lexan. Oopsie. And I sliced into the next section. Should be okay as long as I don't peel that off there. And I did it again. Awesome. It's a little round there. Certain sections go very easily, where you have nice ridges to follow. Alright, so that should be one solid line. Now I saw the trick about using the back edge of the knife to get it going. Yeah, there we go. And it's just coming right off. I understand now why the people who do a lot of painting tell you to use this instead of tape. I wish I had used this stuff on the front grille. I wouldn't have had that overspray. Although the front grille does have... Okay, that's not quite... I apologize for the intrusion. My daughter is refusing to fall asleep tonight. There we go. Yeah, so this is probably why people want to use the air guns, because my paint job is inconsistent, so I get places where you need more pressure than others. There we go, that side's done. Now I gotta do this other side. I'm gonna trim that out off camera. Alright, so I have completed the driver's panel and helmets. Now I did most of this off camera. As you know, I used the liquid mask. For my first time ever using a liquid mask, I am extremely happy with how this came out. This is by far both the most colors I think I've ever used in a single paint job, and probably far and away the most complicated detail panel. So with the liquid mask, right, you paint a section, cut the next away, paint a section, cut away. So I went through from silver. I did the silver section first, then I cut the white drivers outfits out. I backed the silver with white and the drivers with white. Then I went to the red. Now the red came out darker than I had intended, but I actually think it kind of works to make it look a little dirtier. You know, like they've got some dirt. I know it's black, but so I put the red on, and then I backed the red with black for all of the shadows. So I think it came out very, very good. For the helmets, I sprayed this one with my white and then my metallic, and then I did a top coat with the clear, and then this one I did the black metallic, and for both of them I then painted them using the Citadel paints. So I did the black racing stripe and the black kind of rear fin, and I put some kind of stripes on there to look like a pattern, and I painted the visor black. And then this one I did a two-tone with a gray rear, the metallic front, and the chrome visor. On top of that, I have this shifter knob set, which I got from TFR, Tech Factory Racing, so there'll be a link to that in the description. And that comes black, but I sprayed that with a white primer, and then I painted it as well with the Citadel paints. In addition, you'll notice I drilled a bunch of small holes here to look like a air vent. There's an air vent sticker that goes there. Given how the cage is set up, having extra airflow there, and I put some right back here behind the shift knob, that'll act as an airflow. You know, it'll help airflow through the vehicle. I got the passenger's head here turned off to the side. Overall, you know, could it be more perfect? Absolutely. For a first time using the liquid mask, I am very, very happy with how this came out. You're not going to notice a lot of the little errors I made from outside the vehicle at all. So yeah, just absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, so I'll be installing that next. Maybe not next. I'll be installing that as soon as I can, though, because it's beginning to become a hindrance not having it in there.